Guys, the Hungarian Grand Prix was just last weekend, but all that means is that we have another Grand Prix weekend right in front of us. It is the Belgian Grand Prix, a sprint race weekend around Spa-Francorchamps, and I, for one, really love Spa as a track. When I first started sim racing and playing sim racing games, it was one of the first tracks that I really spent a lot of time on because it was iconic and I just really enjoy it. I'm still hesitant about a sprint race around the circuit, but at the same time, I'm excited to see more racing around Spa than we've ever seen before in a single weekend. So we're going to go in, start looking at Spa. We're going to go over my predictions for the weekend, including the sprint race winner, along with all of our normal predictions of biggest positive surprise, biggest disappointment, our regular Grand Prix qualifying top three. Like I mentioned, we're going to be doing the sprint race winner as well. Then we have our race podium, and again, it is this channel, and I would be remiss not to mention our Haas predictions for the race weekend. It's going to be a fun one. It was the last race before the summer break, but I, for one, am ready to see some more on-track action and see where these cars shake out. Can anyone catch Red Bull? Only time is going to tell. But let's go ahead. Let's jump on into our predictions and get this thing rolling. Let's go ahead and jump straight into our first prediction, our biggest positive surprise. And now I've tried to go a little specific here rather than saying the team as a whole. And so I don't know what it is, but there's something in my heart that says Logan Sargent is going to be my biggest positive surprise around Spa. The Williams should do very well around Spa. It's very slippery in a straight line and the high speed corners as well. And so what is Spa, if not the king of long straights and high-speed corners? And so I think the Williams as a whole is going to do extremely well, but I couldn't justify saying Williams is my biggest positive surprise because I think a lot of people are expecting them to perform fairly well. And so I'm going one step further. Logan Sargent is going to score his first World Drivers' Championship points this weekend around Spa. Whether it's in the sprint race, whether it's in the full Grand Prix, I don't know. Maybe both. Who knows? But there's something in my soul that is saying Logan Sargent is going to score points. And so for that reason, he is my biggest positive surprise. And if you're new here, let me go ahead and explain what we do with our predictions as well. I like to give my community a chance to make their own predictions alongside with me in these videos. And so for them, they have gone for their biggest positive surprises, Williams and George Russell. They chose to go with Williams. I don't blame them. Williams looks like it's going to be a hopefully very solid weekend. And George Russell has been a little off the pace, we can say. Has had a very up and down season so far, but at the same time, he's always done extremely well around Spa. And so there they go. Those are their predictions for their biggest positive surprise. And if you want to get in on the predictions, head over to the link below. Join the Discord. That's where they primarily take place. Or if you want to catch a live stream, you can find it here on this YouTube channel on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday Central Standard Time. But that said, that's our biggest positive surprise. Let's go ahead. Let's move on to our biggest disappointment. Moving on now, and this one actually gets to be very simple. It's our prediction for our biggest disappointment out of the Spa Grand Prix. And it's a first that I've ever seen. Of everyone who was involved, we have all gone for the same pick when it comes to our biggest disappointment. And that pick is, for our biggest disappointment, Scuderia Ferrari. Ferrari, what's going on? You guys started last season out coming out the gates and faded down the stretch, which is a little understandable with how Red Bull developed that car. But this year, you were supposed to, at minimum, stay where you are and hopefully take a step forward and learn from your mistakes last year. As the season has gone on, you kind of started up there, but you have very quickly faded back to potentially being the fourth or fifth best car on the grid as others have developed around you. What's going on? Explain it to me. But I mean, that it feels right. I mean, Ferrari power units struggle pretty hard in, power circuits, and I'm not sure there is a power circuit much like Spa. And so all of us kind of agreed on our own that Ferrari, you are the biggest disappointment for the Belgian Grand Prix. Moving right along to our Grand Prix qualifying top three. We don't do sprint shootout qualifying top three, but we are doing our full Grand Prix qualifying predictions. And I know that every predictions video I've made in the last 6 probably has all been the same, where I said that I was going to put Max Verstappen on pole until someone can prove to me that they can beat them. Now, Lewis Hamilton did take pole in Hungary, but that is not going to stop me from turning right back around and predicting Max Verstappen to take pole position in Spa. I mean, when you talk about a power circuit and a power car, that's the Red Bull being driven by Max Verstappen, who probably hasn't been more confident in a car possibly ever. I mean, the Red Bull should be dominant around here. That doesn't mean that they won't get challenged occasionally, maybe, but at the same time, it is not going to stop me from predicting Max Verstappen to take pole position around Spa. Now, the real fun part comes when we get to P2 and 3. So, P2 and P3 have both been very, very good qualifiers the last few races out, one particularly more than the other. For my P2 prediction, starting alongside Max on the front row, I have Lando Norris. Lando proved that McLaren can be very pacey in terms of a single lap in power circuits and high-speed corners like they saw at Silverstone. And so if McLaren can get the setup correct, I think they can do very well around Spa. And I think Lando is going to start alongside Max Verstappen on the front row. And then rounding out my qualifying top 3, I'm not sure about this pick. I'm kind of going out on a limb here, but it's just something I feel deep down I could see coming to fruition. P3, Lewis Hamilton. I think Lewis has been a difference maker in terms of qualifying. The real question and the biggest hesitancy I have is in the W14. Can the W14 keep up with the demands of the longest circuit on the F1 calendar? Only time will tell, but at the same time, I think Lewis is going to put it P3 in qualifying for Spa. And then as for my community predictions, they have gone for a Max Verstappen pole position for both, a Lando Norris P2, an Oscar Piastri P3, and then on the other side, a Verstappen P1, Perez P2, and a George Russell P3, as you can see on the screen here. It's going to get very interesting, and I, for one, cannot wait to see qualifying. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But now let's go ahead. Let's move on to Sprint Winner. We move on now to Sprint Winner, and honestly, this is going to be a very, very quick one. I and my community have gone with Max Verstappen. I mean, Max has been inevitable. He's won the last 7 races in a row, including sprint races. This one's really short. It's a Max win in the sprint. I don't see something happening in the sprint per se. Things might get crazier in the Grand Prix, but when it comes to the sprint, when these drivers are going to be extra careful not to damage the car too severely, as well as throw in some potential wet weather on Saturday as well, I think this has a Max Verstappen win written all over it. We move on now to what we all come to see each race weekend, the podium positions, and we're going to start off nice and hot and say P1. I'm going to save for the end. I usually do a P1 first thing off, but we are actually going to start from P3 down because I think P3 is going to be a lot more exciting than P1. If you remember, I predicted a Max, Lando, and Lewis top 3 in qualifying, but my race results, my podium predictions, P3, Sergio Perez. Like I mentioned when we were talking about pole position with Max, the Red Bull should be dominant. And while Checo may have issues qualifying, when it comes to the race, and specifically what I can only imagine a race around Spa, that Red Bull should be absolutely rapid. Moving on to P2, I have stayed with Lando Norris. I really went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to have some fun with this podium prediction, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think Lando is going to do enough to be able to hold off Sergio, potentially having to wait for Sergio to make his way through the field a bit before trying to catch Lando in P2, a la we saw in Hungary. But I think Lando Norris P2 makes a lot of sense, especially in a very rapidly improved McLaren. And that leaves the winner of the Belgian Grand Prix, Max Verstappen. See, you thought I was going to say someone else, but I mean, what can I say? Max is inevitable. He's won 7 races in a row. If it does happen to be someone else, I think I and the rest of us will be over the moon. But until someone can reliably challenge Red Bull and not be half a second behind per lap in a race setting, I think it's hard to predict anyone else but Max. And potentially, that might just be the way it's going to be deep into the second half of the season. Moving on to my community, we have some exciting finish results I'll start with one over here. Let's go with a P1, Max Verstappen, yada, 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 so on, so forth. Max is fast. P2, Sergio Perez. Thinking Checo might return to the podium one step up where he finished in Hungary, potentially a clean weekend for Sergio. I think he needs it more than anything. And then rounding out the podium, we have Lewis Hamilton in this prediction. That would be a very exciting one. Hopefully it would be a little more action on the circuit than the results might predict, but it would be a fun one. But if we want to talk about fun and exciting, if we want to talk about different, if we want to talk about let's make things happen before the summer break, we have a Oscar Piastri P3. We have a Max Verstappen P2. And a Lando Norris first win in this season at Spa-Francorchamps prediction. A Lando Verstappen Piastri podium would be, I think, one of the most exciting things I've seen in my time of watching Formula One, but that's just me. And then we have our final predictions, our Haas predictions for the race weekends. I pain myself by being a Haas fan, so I drag you guys along with me. My Haas predictions for the race weekend is one car into Q2, one car into SQ2. I think Nico is going to do very well. I can hope that it would be Kevin, but Kevin has shown a lack of pace quite recently, and so I think Nico has been in top form. And so I think Nico is going to make it into Q2 of both the sprint shootout and regular qualifying, but probably nothing else other than that. I think no points for either race kind of goes along with it. The car is just not good on its tires. It's not good at power circuits. It's going to be a little slow, and it might be a little bit of a disappointing weekend for us, but we're going to take our little victories where we can. And then finally, for our community, we have a very much a non-believer in no Q2 appearances at all and no points. Very short and to it, I should say. But we actually have a believer. I wish I had this much hopium and copium, but they actually predict a double top 12 finish, including one car in the points. I would consider that the biggest W. If the weekend turns out like that, I would be over the moon and back. Guys, so there it is, our predictions for the Belgian Grand Prix this weekend. But what do you think? Let me know your predictions down below in the comment section. And if you are an F1 fan, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. We love chatting wheel around here. So go ahead, hop in. We have a fun little community, and we would love to see you stick around. But that'll do it for me here. Enjoy the sprint race weekend around Spa. I know I'm going to enjoy seeing cars go around, as I always do. Hopefully it's not too wet the whole weekend, and hopefully we actually get a race this year, unlike a few years ago. But that'll do it for me here. I'll see you guys after the race weekend is over, when we go back and see how we did in our predictions. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.